Japan. As you may or may not know, I went to Japan over the New Year's, and this is why I'm more comfortable showing my face in front of a camera now, because I went live IRL, got my face reveal, yada yada yada, went beyond games, touched grass, but I also had a really good time, live streamed a couple of times, but there is a handful of stuff that I didn't cover in my live streams, and in this video I'll be covering a couple of them. So sit back and enjoy, and maybe take some notes down for when you go to Japan, because some things were pretty cool. And there's no better way than to start off with the food, of which I had a lot. And I took advantage and went to a conveyor belt sushi place at least 5 times throughout my trip. In Japan, I discovered 2 conveyor belt sushi chains that I went to, one of which had higher quality, while the other had a gacha game attached to it. Here's how it went down. You clear a plate, you slot it in the hole, and after a certain amount of plates you put in, you might get an animation from your iPad, and depending on the ending of the animation, you either win a prize or you don't. I managed to win 1 prize over the who knows how many plates I ate, and it was fine. It was also the first time I got to try real wasabi, and it definitely packed a punch, and I could go for so much more. Staying on track with the traditional Japanese foods, another thing I went to have was okonomiyaki. Okonomiyaki is delicious. And if I had to pick my favorite style, I would have to pick Hiroshima style, just because it was more filling with the fact that they add noodles. And personally, with my experience going to the famous building where there are a bunch of stalls of okonomiyaki and having it made from scratch right in front of you was definitely an experience I enjoyed. Osaka style was also pretty delicious. Now, it also wouldn't be a Japan trip if I didn't also went and eat some ramen. It would also be a disgrace to the channel if I didn't at least go to one of it. I went to the very typical ramen chain called Ichiran. Now, this one was actually a little hard to get into because there was always lineups, and sometimes we were just a little too hungry to wait in line, but it is a pretty straightforward thing. Grab your ticket number, wait for your number to be called, and head on in, and you order from this vending machine, cash only, and then you come into a relatively tightly packed place. But the great thing about this is that you get your own little stall enclosed, and you don't really need to interact with anybody, and then you don't even need to interact with the server because your order is ready made. They check it, they gave it to you, and it was a pretty darn delicious ramen, and I also had a little bit dessert with it too. Outside of that, I honestly didn't eat ramen too much. I kind of went all in on the sushi and also tried some other stuff, including street food. I mostly ended up having most of my street food in Osaka, takoyaki, you name it, it was great. Outside of that, I also went to a couple of all-you-can-eat buffets, whether that be Korean barbecue or even Brazilian. I had a little bit of everything. And all I've got to say is that the quality of the food is just so much better than out in North America, both in Canada and the US, and for a far better price. That being said, sometimes the price came with what the portions are, because portions in Japan are smaller than in North America, but that's probably a good thing considering people's health and how people are in North America. One good example of that is when I actually went to Denny's, because as a Canadian, it was a little sad to see the amount of syrup they gave you per serving for my French toast or your pancakes, but considering the sugar content, I can kind of understand why. But I ended up ordering quite a bit at Denny's anyways, because I went for the more traditional Western stuff and added some more Asian stuff, which you can do at the Japanese Denny's as well. But the best food experience I had, hands down, was going to the Ninja restaurant. Now, in most Japanese vacations, especially your first time, you might think of going to an omakase and splurging a little bit on that. Instead, I kind of went to a fine dining performance experience. Here's how it went down. You wouldn't even tell that this business building I went to go to the Ninja restaurant actually had a Ninja restaurant. Found in the lower levels of the building, you are brought into this room that has a bunch of framed pictures of ninjas, only to be surprised by the giant window being a secret door where you are greeted by a ninja, and you are walked through this dark tunnel for who knows how long. This tunnel is insanely large, only to be brought into this very nicely themed restaurant like a hidden ninja village, and it was a blast. The food was delicious, the performance aspect was kind of nice, and it was just a really great experience. It is, however, fine dining, and you can tell by the food that I ate that it was looking a little fancy. I mean, look at that. escargot, snails. Who'd have thought? Also, the design on my dessert, fantastic. Also tasted really good. Would probably be willing to go again. I have strong ties with art. It is where I involve myself in my career outside of streaming and doing content creation. So it's no surprise that when I went to Japan, I focused quite a bit of time seeking out and going to attend a number of art pieces. And I'm going to share 3 of them, kind of 4, that I went to. Starting off with a really popular tourist attraction, as well as attracting a bunch of locals, is Team Labs. Team Labs is an international art collective that creates artworks using digital technology. It involves a number of artists, programmers, engineers, CG animators, mathematicians, and architects to create these very stunning pieces of work. And I went to 2 of them, and each one of them was worth it. The first one I went to, for a large section of it, does not really look good on camera because it is a very, very dark room where you're really trying to experience the feeling of what you're going through. And by that, I mean you start off barefoot and you walk through basically water and use your other sensories to kind of experience what you're walking through. However, it does definitely open up in the other areas where there's more visual things, such as this room with a bunch of tubes that light up and that change color in respect to the music, as well as using an app that you can get on your phone to kind of interact with it. This one plans on renovating and expanding in the future. However, of the 2 Team Labs, I thought this one was the least interesting one of the 2, but still very much worth going to. But it definitely does not compare to Team Labs Borderless. Team Labs Borderless is basically the flagship Team Labs go-to place compared to all the others, and it is absolutely stunning. Just look at this. Amazing pieces of work, and I got completely lost. I could have spent way more time in here just enjoying and basking in the beautiful sceneries that I saw. However, it was time to move on. The one thing, however, I will say is that one of the rooms was under renovation, so I was not able to enter, but that just means I have another excuse to go again. And I would highly recommend going to these 2 locations. I have taken a lot of video and pictures of the 2 Team Labs, and I plan on uploading most of it onto the channel, but for members only. The other thing I ended up going to is a musical, a 2.5D musical to be specific. Now you may be wondering what the heck a 2.5D musical is, and well, it is basically this. Take an anime and turn it into a live musical, and that's why it's 2.5D, because you're taking the 2D and kind of just making the 3D people doing it. And so there you go. And my original trip to Japan, I was actually going to watch the 2.5D musical of Oshinoko, but unfortunately my trip dates had to shift, and I ended up watching the Attack on Titan musical, which was okay. It was in Osaka. It was fun. I enjoyed it. It definitely helped that I watched the anime and read the manga, because my 2 friends did not, and they were a little lost at times, but they also kind of enjoyed it. Now, it being a live theatrical show, I was of quite a bit of the critique on this one, and to be completely honest, despite it having entertainment value, I didn't really think it was too good. There were definitely cool moments. The use of technology and the giant Titan costumes or puppets was also impressive, but it still definitely doesn't hold up a candle to a Broadway musical, but it was still kind of enjoyable. Last but not least, we head over to Ginza, which is known to be a shopping district. However, there are definitely a number of locations where you can definitely see some really cool pieces of art, or just find actually artists at work in random buildings that you can walk through. That being said, the one that I want to point out is the Art Aquarium. The Art Aquarium is basically as it sounds. It's an aquarium that is kind of designed more artistically. Now, the only fish here are basically koi and goldfish, so the variety of fish isn't that high, but you're not just there for the fish and a variety of fish. It's kind of just basking basking in the scenery, the designs of the fish bowls and tanks, as well as the other things that it provides, and the feeling and the mood that the music as you walk through the different areas kind of makes you feel. And I thought it was really well designed, and boy oh boy, at the end of it was I very tempted to buy some of the art pieces in the merch shop. But it being Ginza, the prices were a little too high for my liking, so I had to pass. That being said, it definitely doesn't hold a candle to the random art installation I ended up walking through in Ginza that had high-end artists showcasing their art and actually selling it. In fact, I found myself completely stunned by one artist's work where they actually tried selling me their art because I was absolutely stunned by their art piece. This one over here, and it was actually done by an artist I kind of knew to a certain extent. They have done illustrations for visual novels as well as some games, but the one art piece that I actually know them for is actually for a Hatsune Miku art piece. In fact, they showed it to me because they came up to me, probably saw my reaction at their art piece, showed me their work, and said and tried to sell me the art that I was so shocked at seeing, and would have probably convinced me in our little awkward talking. However, that darn art piece was $10,000. No thank you. That being said, boy oh boy was it a stunning piece of art, and those were the arty things I did. Let's also talk about some of the nightlife, and one of the things I went to was a Muscle Girls bar. Now this is a themed bar that in this bar you have a bunch of really fit Japanese women serving you and doing stuff to you, and boy was it a ride. To kind of just give you a little bit of a preview of some of the things that got done to me, here's a couple little clips. But outside of that, you also get to drink quite a lot, and I sure drank quite a bit. And they also do a bunch of little performances that was really enjoyable and crazy, hilarious, fun. And the other thing is that they stream every night. So you can actually watch them on Twitch if you want to, which is kind of crazy. As for everything else that happened in the bar, you'll probably have to wait, as I plan on making a separate video about it sometime down the line. So stay tuned for that video if I don't lock it behind membership. That being said, I did get completely bamboozled by the alcohol because it did not hit the next day. It hit that same night. So as I left, I was not feeling really good. Same thing with my friends. So we kind of just went to a McDonald's, and I actually just stayed there for 2 hours to recover. The crazy thing though is that the next morning I was completely fine. I don't know what it is about Japanese alcohol, but it definitely hits different. One last cool thing I did in Japan that I'm going to share with you guys in this video is the sumo tournament that I attended. Now this is something that was not on my radar, but one of my friends was really interested in going. So we got tickets and we went for it. And as you can see, the seats that we got were nowhere near close to where the action was, but thankfully we have modern technology, and I use my phone to zoom in to get really good views of each of the matches. Now this was actually a really cool experience. I was not expecting it to be as fun and as intense for each match. It was really cool to see the ritualistic starts to each of the matches, how there was a lot of time between the actual bout, and each of the bouts were as intense as you would expect from professionals, and it was loads of fun. Lots of people were there towards the end. I was also really surprised to see how long each of the days were. Like, it started at like 8 a.m. and went all the way till evening, and our tickets covered the whole day if we so choose, but the professionals or the higher ranking sumos were later in the day, so we went in the afternoon and stayed there till the end, and it was an incredible experience. I will probably release a video of all the sumo clips that I have for members, so stay tuned for that. But here is one of the more intense fights that we saw, and with me reacting to it with my friends.
Yeah.
It was also interesting to see the sumos use different strategies to try and win their fights. There were definitely some matchups that did not look fair in terms of sizes between the two opponents, but even sometimes with that disadvantage, the smaller one would still have a chance at winning, and so that was really cool to see. Now, this tournament was more of a round robin and not so much a tournament bracket, so the matchups were kind of picked by draw that we didn't get to see, and I don't know much more beyond that for the tournament. I was just excited to see that. The food there was also okay for a competition, and this concludes the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you are interested in seeing all the unedited footage of the sumo wrestling and the Muscle Girls and maybe some other stuff, that will be reserved to members only, so if you're interested in that, feel free to check that out. That being said, that will be all, and thank you guys so much for watching, and until the next time, adieu and goodbye.